Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today I had a crazy day of battles in the Open Great League with Shadow Blastoise Safe Switch. Shadow Blastoise had an unbelievable performance at a recent regional championship, climbing into the top 4. So I tested it out, and it honestly performed amazingly as a safe switch, as even up a tiny amount of energy, this thing applies insane pressure onto opponents' teams. For the team, I ran Shadow Jumpluff as the lead, the Shadow Blastoise as the safe switch, and Morpeko as the closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at this team in action. Hopping into game number 1, and we pick up an amazing lead, Shadow Jumpluff into Guzzlord. And the fact that the opponent is staying in here and throwing on alignment right off the bat, they are very clearly incredibly core broken by the Jumpluff, and they need to do whatever they can to try and get some damage here. I full send the Acrobatics, they're going to commit the shield, and now I will go for the Aerial Ace. This is not Aerial Ace range, but it will get it low enough that now I feel pretty comfortable switching into the Blastoise, getting a sneak as I catch the Dragon Claw. Opponent is now going to send in a Grimer, and I am not baiting. I'm going straight for the Skull Bash here, because they can live a Shadow Hydro Cannon, but a Shadow Skull Bash almost picks up the full one-hit KO. I will very comfortably shield once, get the rollout farm down, and now, just like that, they lost an entire Pokemon. The threat of Shadow Blastoise is absolutely incredible. In comes a Golisopod, and I'm going to be firing off the Hydro Cannon. I'm short of a Skull Bash, but even so, Shadow Hydro Cannon will still do a ton of damage to Golisopod. Hydro Cannon coming through, Golisopod is now going to be in the red health. I send in Jumpluff, opponent overfarms too much, and that's just completely going to be game over, as since it's a CMP tie, I'm very comfortable to shield here. Even if they didn't CMP, I was still in a winning position. I could have just let the Jumpluff go and won the game with the Morpeko, but at this point, we just don't even need the Morpeko, and we're able to take the win. Shadow Jumpluff versus Shadow Piloswine. So we go from an unbelievable lead to an absolute nightmare lead. Piloswine is going to bank a ton of energy, out comes Jellicent, and Blastoise is fully walled here. My charge moves are single resisted with the Hydro Cannon or double resisted with the Skull Bash. But the thing is, I don't think anyone told Shadow Blastoise they were resisted, because look at this. A third Shadow Hydro Cannon is just going to KO. We win the CMP tie over the Jellicent, and just like that, out of a matchup where we're completely walled, I'm able to get a shield advantage. The opponent is going to full send the Shadow Ball, picking up the KO, but now I can send in Jumpluff. Opponent is going to be firing off their energy right away, as they want to guaranteed land this Shadow Ball, but that's very okay. I can look to farm up quite a bit. I'm going to throw 5 in the move. This Hex will not land, as the Aerial Ace will pick up the KO. In comes the Piloswine, but the Piloswine still has a lot of energy. This is going to be a tricky one. I need to either force the final shield or just pick up the knockout with Shadow Acrobatics. Acrobatics into the Piloswine, opponent calls the bait, they're getting KO'd. In the back is going to be Golisopod, and I'm able to outpace here. I'm on the 4 cycle. Aerial Ace is going to be shielded. If they no shield, I can just switch and farm down, but since they shielded, I can just make the Aura Wheel as they get the double up, and my opponent will resign the match. We're actually seeing quite a bit of Grimer today, so it is going to be Shadow Jumpluff into Shadow Grimer. Grimer, a pretty scary Pokemon to encounter, as obviously Mud Slap would completely destroy Morpeko, and Sludge would do a ton of super effective damage to the Jumpluff. I do want to try and pressure some shields back, so I am going to commit the shield. In the moment, I wasn't sure if I lived a Sludge, as I have a very poor IV Shadow Jumpluff. It turns out, and I learned this by no shielding right here, that I do actually survive a Sludge. Not by much. Jumpluff gets absolutely rocked, but is barely able to hang on. And now I can look to win the one shield. My opponent is highly likely to let this go, as they can go for farm on whatever they decide to bring in. It's a Talonflame. I have 2 good checks to that, so I pivot into the Blastoise. Opponent now going to send out Golisopod. And oh my goodness, they're going to have to immediately shield or get one shot by the Skull Bash. And now Shadow Blastoise is boosted. Shadow Blastoise with the +1 defense is not going to be threatened by the X-Scissor. X-Scissor is going to land. Blastoise unable to make the Skull Bash, as my opponent is forced to fire off energy. X-Scissor will pick up the KO. I can send in more Pekko, and instead of CMP tying, I can just go for a catch here onto the Jumpluff. Jumpluff, able to absorb the X-Scissor. They are going to undercharge it to get a little bit of extra farm, but realistically, it's not going to matter as more Pekko is going to get that full farm down. Back in comes the Talonflame, and my opponent's just going to stop tapping as I have 2 moves on this more Pekko. And that's one thing that I really liked about the Shadow Blastoise. It has such incredible shield pressure in the mid game that you can often get the shield advantage for more Pekko, and then more Pekko is in a really good spot. Bad lead in the next match, leading into Sandslash. I save switch into the Shadow Blastoise, and out comes Shadow Drapion. A high-ranked Shadow Blastoise does win the 2 shield against Shadow Drapion as long as they do not get a crunch debuff. But my goal here is I don't really want switch advantage. What I want is shield advantage. I'm able to force a shield. I'm able to force all of my opponent's energy as well. So even though it was a tough lead, in the mid game, Blastoise is just getting incredible value. In comes the Jumpluff, absorbing that crunch damage and looking to build up. Here my opponent tries to go for a catch. They aggressively pivot into the Sandslash, and now I'm going to send in more Pekko. The good news for me is that most teams are not going to be running multiple flying resists, because if you're leading a steel type, you're never going to have a steel type in the back. So by failing this catch, they have actually thrown away what's highly likely to be their only acrobatics resistance, and acrobatics hits hard against every Pokemon neutrally. Down goes the Sandslash. Switch timer almost available for me if I need it. I do exit boosted. In comes Drapion. They try and catch a Psychic Fangs, and their final Pokemon is Feraligatr, and this game is just over. Aura Wheel picks up the KO very cleanly, and now I get to fire off the electric type Aura Wheel. If they shield this, they're just getting comboed with an Acrobatics. They will end up shielding. They try and predict the switch in here by firing off energy with the Drapion, but I was just going to overfarm by 2 and then go for the snipe. So we're in a very comfortable position. Acrobatics KOs the Drapion, and off a very negative lead, we're able to take the win. Great lead in the next match, leading into a Malamar, although this is an incredibly tough opponent. Colin 6 is a multiple-time regional champion. I'm going to be full sending the Acrobatics here. I want to guarantee shield advantage or a massive amount of damage. I get the shield advantage, and now the Malamar throws, I'm just sending in Shadow Blastoise. The Shadow Blastoise up a shield is a terror to deal with. In comes the Shadow Blastoise opponent, is going to be firing off energy, and I'm very comfortable tanking whatever they throw. It's going to be the harder hitting superpower. Now there's a catch attempt onto his own Blastoise, and he perfectly times the switch in, so he will still get the sneak. Skull Bash is going to be shielded, and just like that, I have a 2 shield advantage. My opponent is forced to throw, unable to get that farm down, and now up 2 shields. I am feeling pretty good about Morpeko's chances. Morpeko, I am going to be shielding because Hydro Cannon would do quite a lot of damage. So the Hydro Cannon is going to be shielded. I'm not going to play the CMP tie. Instead, I will go for a catch onto the Jumpluff. I can throw 2 and then go for the Aerial Ace here. My opponent makes a brilliant play. He's able to save the Blastoise, catch the Aerial Ace onto the Shadow Jumpluff, and Jumpluff is able to get a farm down. Back in comes Morpeko. I do not want this Jumpluff to fire off energy, so I'm going to fire off this Aura Wheel, and Aura Wheel will pick up the KO. But back in comes Malamar, and Malamar is going to apply quite a bit of pressure here with Superpower. I'm forced to commit the shield. I'm going to have to Aura Wheel, and now I believe I should be able to get to a Psychic Fangs to take the win. However, in the moment, I didn't trust that Psychic Fangs would be enough to KO. I think +2 it would have KO'd, but instead I try to commit to the Aura Wheel and I get outpaced. I think that was a winnable game if I just clicked Psychic Fangs, but unfortunately I did not, and that will be a loss. Shadow Jumpluff into Claydol is a bit of an uncomfortable lead matchup. If you have a very good Shadow Jumpluff, you can very comfortably survive the Ice Beam and never be in danger of being mud-slapped down. But since I have a pretty poor IV, if an Ice Beam lands, I'm in trouble. However, the fact that they're shielding telegraphs the fact that they want to go for a Rock Tomb. So I'm very comfortable no shielding that, in the confidence that it's probably a 95% chance that it's going to be the Rock Tomb. Acrobatics is going to land. That's some very nice damage. I don't have good fast move pressure into Claydol in the back, so I'm more than happy to match shields and try and play for alignment, because Honestly, even more so than alignment, I just don't have an ability to farm this down, so I just want the Claydol out of here. Claydol is going to get KO'd, in comes Furret, and Furret is going to be hit with an Acrobatics. I can't afford to pivot out here, as Blastoise would not appreciate the Trailblaze. I think I actually get another move, and I do! I get the Acrobatics on 1 HP. That forces the Furret to fire off energy as they're able to win the CMP tie, and now I can just send in Morpeko. Morpeko, very comfortable tanking a Swift, and then I can throw one more and CMP tie on Swift number 2. Psychic Fangs will not KO, so there's no point in ever throwing a Psychic Fangs here. I always want to throw the move that KOs, so Aura Wheel is going to pick up the knockout. In the back is Pangoro. I bank the Aura Wheel and switch into Shadow Blastoise. Shadow Blastoise, this is the moment of truth. Can we survive a close combat from a massive attack stat Pokemon? Yes, we can, and that is instantly game winning. As I have an Aura Wheel banked, but by switching out, it's now an electric type Aura Wheel, so that's why I swapped out and banked the move, because his defense is debuffed, which means this electric Aura Wheel is now easily going to be KOing that Pangoro. So Pangoro endgame, a bit scary for the backline, but Shadow Blastoise is an absolute tank. Great lead in the next match, Shadow Jumpluff into Golisopod. They're staying in, which works out very nicely for me. They are going to try and CMP tie on the Acrobatics, and I'm just more than happy to overfarm. X-Scissor will do quite a bit of damage, and I like going for the double Aerial Ace play, because even if they end up shielding the first, you're still guaranteed to outpace and do some pretty nice damage. They do end up no shield in the first, but I'm still okay with that because I can control switch advantage. Out comes Toxapex, that's not a Pokemon you see every day. In comes Shadow Blastoise, they're going to send out Serperior. But watch what Shadow Blastoise can do here. The pressure that Shadow Blastoise outputs is absolutely unreal. So I throw one rollout, throw it on good timing here. I'm baiting with the Hydro Cannon. It gets the shield. Now I can throw the Skull Bash when I get it to outpace. And look at Shadow Blastoise, man. It forces 2 shields from Serperior. Serperior gonna fire off some energy, and that's great by me. Frenzy Plant picks up the KO. I can just send in Jumpluff. My Jumpluff, I don't have faith that it's going to survive here, but it does survive. In comes the Toxapex. I'm able to successfully bank the Acrobatics, and this game is over. My opponent switched pretty quickly, so they don't have a lot of residual energy, so this is only going to be a brine, and now I get to fire off the electric type Aura Wheel. Aura Wheel is going to get them deep into the red health, and this is going to set up a very nice farm down. Morpeko actually leaves with a +1 Dark Aura Wheel, so it turns out we won't even need the Acrobatics after all, as this Aura Wheel is going to make quick work of Serperior. We move to the next match, and we're leading Shadow Jumpluff into Shadow Jumpluff. Okay, we have the mirror. This mirror is always a bit uncomfortable. If it's the regular, I'm more inclined to no shield because I know that I can survive it. But with my Jumpluff IVs, I know that I'm always going to be winning the CMP tie, so I will oftentimes go for a bait first and just confidently play to that CMP. My opponent full sent in Acrobatics, and now I have a huge advantage in this matchup. So I can overfarm, play to the CMP tie here once again, and full send the Acrobatics. Acrobatics is going to be double shielded. Even if they Aerial Ace here, it's not going to matter because we've established that I do win the CMP tie. Now my opponent has to catch out of this, or they're just getting KO'd. They do not catch out of it, which means this is going to be so long. Good night to the Jumpluff. Jumpluff is going to get KO'd. In comes Lapras. I have 2 better responses to this, so I'm going to bank the Acrobatics and send in the Shadow Blastoise. If they have Skull Bash, this could be uncomfortable, but I think I could still hang on. They do not. It's just the Sparkling Aria. They're going for another move, and Shadow Blastoise, they better hope they have a Skull Bash resist, and they can switch it in, because if they don't, this is about to get ugly very quickly. Shadow Blastoise makes the Skull Bash. There's no switch. Lapras gets rocked. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Hopping into the next match, we actually have a regular Jumpluff this time. So regular Jumpluff, I believe in this match, I did actually end up respecting their attack, which against the regular Jumpluff you shouldn't do because most regular Jumpluffs are on Aerial Ace Energy Ball. So here, this is a pretty big misplay by me. I shouldn't be shielding this because most of the time the regular Jumpluffs are on Energy Ball. Energy Ball is definitely just worse in my view because with so few Pokemon resisting flying and Acrobatics being an absurdly cracked move, you should basically always be running Acrobatics because you can just get incredible value even in bad matchups. I'm able to land that Acrobatics, and now it's the perfect time to send in Shadow Blastoise. Blastoise hits the field, answered with Morpeko. And if you're up a little bit of energy on Blastoise, Blastoise can beat Morpeko. Hydro Cannon is going to be shielded. My opponent is at 9, which means it's a Psychic Fangs plus an Aura Wheel. I no shield. They Psychic Fangs expecting a shield, and now they're forced to burn all of their energy. So we're just in an incredibly good spot. My opponent felt pressured to bait there because if they Aura Wheel and then they see him B-Tie with the Psychic Fangs may not KO. Now I get to send in Morpeko. I will shield up as they go for the Aura Wheel, and now I'm going to continue to farm. Morpeko is going to switch out into the Jumpluff. The important thing is they did not switch out with a move. They send in their Morpeko, and they have a Psychic Fangs, but the move they need is Aura Wheel. So that's very okay. Now I'm at the back-to-back Aura Wheels, so I can fire off the Aura Wheel Electric. That is going to pick up the KO onto Morpeko. In the back, it's going to be, oh, I thought it was a Gastrodon, but it was actually a Quagsire. Quagsire getting absolutely rocked by the +1 Aura Wheel. We make the Psychic Fangs, and Morpeko very comfortably able to clean up. But again, Shadow Blastoise is just such an incredibly safe mon to switch in, and it's so good at getting that shield advantage that can set up Morpeko to run absolutely roughshod. All in all, I had an amazing day with this team. I think across the battles that I played with it, I went 15-7 and was able to climb back to Legend rank. So overall, I think the team is a very potent one. We've seen Shadow Jumpluff plus Morpeko Core have a lot of success in the past, and it had success again today. I think that with this team, a lot of the success can come with knowing when to safe switch in that Shadow Blastoise. Obviously, if it's something that completely destroys Jumpluff, you're going to have to switch in right away. But even for something like a Drapion, Jumpluff can play that out, build up to the acrobatics, bait with an Aerial Ace, and the moment you have an advantage, then you can send in that Blastoise. Because Blastoise, if it has a little bit of advantage, if you're up a shield, or if you can get your opponent's first Pokemon low and then get that small head start, even against a Morpeko switch-in, the opponent had to burn so much energy just to get rid of the Blastoise, because Blastoise having 4 to the first and then 3 for the Hydro Cannons thereafter makes life very uncomfortable. So if you're up that one rollout, you can end up outspeeding a lot of opponents and really make life uncomfortable. So the team, it honestly felt great. I think a few problem Pokemon could potentially be something like a Clodsire would be a bit difficult. If you saw Clodsire, you kind of just have to safe switch into the Blastoise and play it out from there and try and either with a combination of several acrobatics or potentially a Morpeko farm down in a mid game to kind of overwhelm. That would be a bit difficult, and Credilli would also be a little bit awkward. Credilli is basically extinct in high elo open Great League. Like on leaderboards, Credilli is just gone because people are realizing that even if you're running ABA weak to it, Credilli, it's a very predictable Pokemon. It's a very strong Pokemon, but a lot of the times people are rock tombing when they get it, and that can allow you to play around that weakness. So if you saw Credilli, I would imagine you could probably just play it out with the Jumpluff, trying to potentially land some damage, grab a shield advantage, catch a Rock Tomb onto Blastoise, and play it out from there, because a lot of Credilli lead teams oftentimes end up being weak to Morpeko in the back. So with the combination of Jumpluff and Blastoise, if you're able to neutralize Credilli, then it can set up Morpeko with an advantage to potentially try and reverse sweep them in the endgame. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.